Greetings to all my tech heads out there in the KevTechify nation, and if you're new here, welcome. In this episode, we're going to look at ports and addresses. We'll be discussing IP addresses, interfaces, and ports. This episode is part of my series on Introduction to Networks. I'm Kevin here at KevTechify. Let's get this adventure started. When we're dealing in today's network, we're typically dealing with IP addresses, Internet Protocol addresses. There's two versions out there. There's version 4 IP addresses and there's version 6 IP addresses. Typically, IP is capitalized, lowercase v, and then a 4 for IP version 4. If it doesn't say what version after it, most of the time you can assume we're talking version 4 addresses. Now, version 4 addresses, they're typically identified as 4 numbers followed by period. Down here in this example, we have 4 numbers. 192.168.1.10. That is the IP address. That's what an IP version 4 address looks like. 4 numbers between 0 and 255 separated by decimal points. 192.168.1.10. Right below it, the subnet mask, that's actually another IP address number. It's a specialized one we'll talk about a little bit later, 255.255.255.0. Once again, 4 numbers separated by that. Default gateway, another version 4 IP address, 192.168.1.1. That's what an IP version 4 address looks like. IP version 6 address gets a little bit more complicated when we look at it. This is what an IP version 6 address looks like. What that is here is it's a bigger number. You can have a lot more IP version 6 addresses than IP version 4 address, but this is what it looks like. Down here's another IP version 6 number. There's some different shortcuts and shorthand methods that happen with IP version 6 number. But just to understand, IP version 4 addresses has 4 numbers followed by periods. IP version 6 addresses typically have a lot more numbers with them, and they can go all the way up from 0 to 9, including A, B, C, D, and F. This is an IP version 6 address. Normally, when we're talking IP version 6, you're going to see IP, lowercase v, and a 6. It'll almost always say IP version 6. But once again, if you just see the word IP, you can pretty much assume that we're dealing with IP version 4 at this point. It was my pleasure to bring you this wonderful episode on ports and addresses. If you like this episode and you got value out of it, and of course, depending upon what platform you're using, please click that like button, give a 5-star rating, leave a comment. This all helps support the channel. Please take a minute to subscribe to my channel. All of my socials and contact information are on my website, KevTechify.com, and you can get all these episodes in video and podcast form. In the upper right is my playlist for my series on Introduction to Networks. In the bottom right is one of my favorite videos that I linked just for you. Thank you so much for watching this episode on my series of Introduction to Networks. Once again, I'm Kevin. This is KevTechify. I'll see you next time for another great adventure.